They said I was lucky to have him. That someone like me should be grateful. But the night he mocked my limp in front of hundreds, I smiled, because that smile was the beginning of his end. The chandeliers glittered like frozen rain above the ballroom, scattering light across the crowd of laughing faces, champagne glasses, and whispered envy. It was our engagement night, Adrian and I, the perfect couple everyone wanted to be. I stood beside him in a silver gown that shimmered with every movement, the soft click of my cane almost drowned out by the orchestra. I had chosen not to hide it tonight. If I was going to start a new chapter, it would be as I was, not as people wanted me to be. Adrian looked radiant in his tailored suit, confident and magnetic. He had that kind of charm that drew people in like moths to a flame. Every eye was on him, his laughter filling the hall, his words polished and sharp. I had fallen in love with that charm once. Back then, it had made me feel safe, admired, chosen. Tonight, though, something about it felt rehearsed. Too polished, like he was performing for the world instead of living a moment with me. My fingers trembled as I adjusted the ring he'd slipped on my finger earlier that evening. It was flawless, just like everything else he touched, at least on the surface. My parents had spared no expense. This night was their proof that their daughter, despite the limp, despite the whispers, had found someone who accepted her. The thought made my throat tighten. As the crowd gathered for speeches, Adrian raised his glass, that easy grin stretching across his face. His arm slid around my waist, firm and possessive. "Everyone," he began, his voice smooth and practiced, "thank you for coming to celebrate with us. You all know how much this means to us, especially to me." He glanced at me then, and for a brief second, I thought I saw sincerity. But it vanished as quickly as it came. "You know," he continued, "the first time I met her, she was trying to cross the street. And let's just say," he paused, smirking, eyes glinting with mischief, "she wasn't exactly winning any races." Laughter. Loud, bright, unrestrained. My chest tightened. My hand froze around the stem of my glass. He went on, chuckling at his own words. "I thought she might fall before I even reached her, but I caught her, literally, and she's been slowing me down ever since." More laughter. The sound filled the air like static, sharp and unbearable. My ears rang. I tried to smile, because what else could I do? Cameras were flashing, guests were watching, and any sign of hurt would only feed the gossip. "She's sensitive. She's lucky he even loves her." I took a slow sip of champagne to hide the tremor in my hands. He didn't notice. He was basking in their approval, in the way they adored his humor, his confidence. I wanted to disappear. I wanted to scream, but instead, I looked him dead in the eye, tilted my head slightly, and said, "Careful, Adrian. The same slow girl you mocked might just outrun your future." The crowd laughed again, thinking I was teasing back. But my voice had been too calm, too cold. If he noticed, he didn't show it. He gave me a playful smile, leaned in close enough for only me to hear, and whispered through clenched teeth, "Don't ruin tonight, okay? Everyone's watching." That was the moment something inside me shifted. The man I'd loved, the one I defended to everyone who doubted us, had just turned my greatest battle into a punchline. I'd spent years fighting to walk again after the accident, the endless therapy sessions, the pain that crawled up my spine every night, the tears no one saw. And he thought it was funny. I excused myself quietly, slipping through the crowd while he continued his speech. My reflection in the restroom mirror stopped me cold. My makeup was perfect, my hair pinned in elegant curls, but the woman staring back looked hollow. I touched the faint scar near my knee, hidden under layers of silk, and whispered to my reflection, "You survived worse. Don't break now." I straightened, fixed my lipstick, and returned to the ballroom. The laughter hadn't stopped. Adrian was surrounded by people, businessmen, influencers, his parents beaming with pride. He was in his element, and I realized then how small I looked next to him. Not because of my disability, but because I had let his world define my worth. He caught my eye and motioned me over, wrapping an arm around my waist when I got close. "There she is," he said, smiling for the cameras. "The woman who made me believe in fate." Fate, what a joke. My smile didn't reach my eyes, but no one noticed. They only saw the perfect couple, the successful entrepreneur and the resilient beauty who overcame her limitations. I'd become his trophy story, proof of his compassion, the sweet detail that made his life appear noble. As the evening wore on, I saw him laughing with a woman in red, a colleague from his office. Her hand lingered on his arm longer than necessary. Their smiles had a history I couldn't ignore. I watched, silent, expressionless, as my heart hardened like glass. When he finally came to me, smelling of wine and charm, he said, "You're too quiet tonight." "I'm just observing," I replied. He chuckled. "You always think too much. And you never think enough," I said under my breath. He didn't hear. Or maybe he did and chose not to care. By the time the last guests began to leave, my parents hugged me, proud and oblivious. "You looked beautiful, darling," my mother whispered. "You make him better." I almost laughed. When Adrian's hand slipped into mine as we waved goodbye to the final guests, I felt nothing. No warmth, no connection. Just a hollow ache that settled deep in my chest. As the ballroom emptied, I looked at the remnants of the night, the scattered rose petals, the half-empty glasses, the glittering ring on my hand, and felt something awaken inside me. Not revenge, not yet, but something colder. A decision. He thought my silence was compliance. He thought my sneer was harmless. But I knew then that I'd never let him humiliate me again. Later that night, as I lay awake in bed, his words replayed in my mind, "She's been slowing me down ever since." He didn't realize the truth. I wasn't slowing him down. I was holding him together. And once I let go, everything he built on my name, my loyalty, my quiet endurance, would fall apart. I turned off my phone, exhaled slowly, and smiled into the darkness. The kind of smile that promised storms. Because the same woman he mocked for moving slowly had already started walking away from him, and he didn't even notice. The world had laughed with him tonight. But soon enough, they'd stop laughing. And when they did, I'd be the only one still standing. They said revenge poisons the soul, but I never wanted revenge. I only wanted him to feel what it was like to lose everything he mocked me for. 3 months after the engagement party, the glitter of that night had dulled into dust. The laughter that once filled our days had become arguments whispered through clenched teeth. Adrian had grown restless. Maybe it was guilt, maybe pride, maybe both, but he'd begun to crumble without even realizing it. The cracks started quietly. A misplaced file here, a missed meeting there. I noticed everything, though he thought I was too busy with charity events and physiotherapy sessions to care. He didn't know I was already planning my exit, quietly, efficiently, the way I'd once trained my leg to move again after the accident, step by step, slow but steady. After that night, the engagement ring on my finger felt heavier each day. It wasn't a promise anymore, it was a reminder of humiliation wrapped in gold. But I kept it on, because appearances mattered to him. And for now, appearances were my weapon. He still smiled for the cameras, held my hand at public events, but his grip was tighter now, possessive. He wanted to make sure I still looked like the woman who adored him, who laughed at his jokes, who clung to him as if he'd saved her. He hadn't saved me. I was about to save myself. The first blow came from within his company. Adrian was a rising star in tech, with investors who adored his charm and results. But charm doesn't hide everything. I'd quietly reached out to an investigative journalist, a woman I'd met during a charity dinner months earlier. I didn't feed her lies, I simply handed her truths Adrian had buried under confidence and cocktails. Financial discrepancies, unethical deals, employee complaints brushed under the rug. She took it from there. When the article came out, the world didn't explode overnight, it cracked, softly. A headline on a Monday morning, whispers at a board meeting by afternoon. Behind the charmer, Adrian Hale's shady deals and hidden scandals. He stormed into the apartment that night, phone in hand, face pale. "Did you see this?" he demanded. "Some idiot spreading lies about me online." I glanced at him from the kitchen counter, pretending to read. Lies, of course. Who else would write this garbage? They're saying I manipulated data, that I misused funds. I kept my voice soft. "Did you?" He froze, eyes narrowing. "What are you implying?" "Nothing," I said simply. "But lies don't spread that easily unless there's truth in them." He slammed his phone on the table. "You sound like everyone else. Like you want to believe I'm guilty." I turned the page of my magazine, calm and detached. "Maybe I just don't want to be the fool in your story again." He left the room, muttering under his breath, and I smiled faintly. Because for the first time, he was losing control, and I didn't even have to lift a finger. Days turned to weeks, and Adrian's downfall gathered speed. Investors withdrew their support, his business partners began ghosting him, and whispers turned into front-page news. His charm, once his greatest strength, now looked like manipulation. And then came the photo. Someone leaked an image of Adrian and the woman in red, his colleague from the engagement party, leaving a hotel together. The caption was brutal. Engaged entrepreneur spotted in scandalous affair. It spread like wildfire. I was at my foundation when it broke. Step Forward, the rehabilitation initiative I'd quietly started after transferring my shares from his company. We helped women with disabilities regain confidence and independence, something I knew too well. That day, as I handed a prosthetic limb to a young girl who had lost her leg in a car crash, I felt something I hadn't in a long time: peace. When Adrian called that evening, his voice was shaking. "You've seen it, haven't you?" "Yes," I said, my tone flat. "This isn't what it looks like. She's just a colleague. Someone's trying to frame me. Like you framed me that night." I asked quietly. "What? The night you mocked my limp? The night you laughed while I stood there pretending not to feel broken?" He fell silent. For the first time, his confidence slipped completely. "You're still holding on to that?" "No," I said. "I let it go that same night. You just never realized that when I smiled at you, I was already walking away." He hung up. By the end of the month, the scandal had destroyed his public image. The company forced him to step down for investigation. The woman in red distanced herself, issuing a statement that painted him as manipulative and controlling. Everything he'd built, the empire he boasted about, crumbled, one brick at a time. But I didn't feel triumph. I felt release. A week later, I saw him at the cafe where we used to spend Sunday mornings. He looked smaller somehow, worn down. His hair was unkempt, his clothes wrinkled, his eyes dull. He didn't see me at first, sitting in the corner with my cup of tea. When he finally noticed, he froze, then walked over slowly. "Can I sit?" he asked. I nodded. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The air between us was heavy, filled with everything unsaid. Finally, he whispered, "You did this, didn't you?" I looked at him, calm and unflinching. "You did this to yourself." "I just made a mistake," he said, voice trembling. "You could have helped me." "I did," I replied. "I helped you become exactly who you are now, someone stripped of all his illusions." He stared at me, anger flashing in his eyes. "You ruined me." I shook my head. "You ruined yourself when you decided that mocking someone's pain was entertainment. When you built a life on lies and laughter at others' expense. You thought I'd be your quiet shadow forever, didn't you?" He didn't answer. I reached for my cane, stood slowly, and looked down at him. "The night you mocked me," I said softly, "you turned my limp into a spectacle. But you forgot, people don't remember who walks fastest. They remember who walks away." And I walked out, step by step, cane tapping softly against the tiled floor. Each sound echoed like punctuation to everything left behind. Outside, the air felt new, crisp and light. I watched the sun dip below the skyline, golden and forgiving. The world had a strange way of balancing itself. In the months that followed, Step Forward grew rapidly. The same media that once celebrated Adrian's arrogance now celebrated our foundation's work. We provided therapy, employment, and counseling to women who had been broken, by accidents, by people, by life itself. Every success story felt like another wound healed, another piece of myself mended. Sometimes I'd see his name in passing, court hearings, asset liquidations, debt settlements. Each time, I felt neither pity nor pride. Just closure. Because my victory wasn't his downfall, it was my freedom. And every time I walked into Step Forward, surrounded by women who smiled despite their scars, I remembered that strength isn't defined by how straight you stand. It's defined by how you rise after they make you fall. He had mocked my limp. But in the end, I was the one still walking, steady, strong, and free.